Environmental Justice Lab. I'm your host, Dr. Leslie Joseph. Thank you so much for joining me. And I missed you. I don't know if you missed me, but I missed you a lot. So the school year is ending and campuses all over the country are doing finals, trying to get things done for the semester so we can have a nice summer break. And so I've been busy at work grading papers, grading reports, trying to get people's grades in so they can finish the semester strong. And so I've missed the last couple of weeks, but I am back and it is good to be with you. We have so much to talk about, so many things I've been waiting to share, and it's just good to be here to share them with you. As you know, we are talking about Palestine. This is a series where we're talking about what is going on in Palestine and what's always been going on in Palestine. And so what we've been going through are the environmental injustices that have perpetuated throughout history. It's been going on for so long. Talking about food, talking about who makes decisions, all these different issues that are going on, I wanted to bring to your attention. And importantly, I want you to know that all of these things have been occurring before this current war broke out. So don't think that what we're talking about is a result of the current conflict and the war, the hostilities that are going on right now at the moment. Of course, it's making things a whole lot worse, but it's not the reason. And I don't want you to think that what I'm discussing would end when this war ends. This is a systemic problem that needs to be addressed and needs to be confronted with facts and with real solutions and empathy for those who are suffering as a result of these injustices. And so, just a quick side note, I am a professor at a university, and of course I couldn't begin this discussion without acknowledging the Gaza Solidarity encampments that are all across the United States in various different universities, trying to give voice to the issues and the cause that Palestinians have for freedom, for self-determination, and more importantly, for an end to this current conflict, this end to this current war. And so as a professor, I have to say, go on the record, I fully support, fully endorse, fully embrace the idea of protesting injustice. You should always be allowed, as a student especially, to protest injustice. Historically, we've done it for so long. It's part of the fabric of our education system to be able to protest injustice. We did it for the Vietnam War. We've done it in the Civil Rights Movement. We've done it for the push for women's rights. We've done it to end apartheid in South Africa. We do it consistently. I've even seen some during the Iraq War when I was in school as an undergraduate student. It is just the nature and the expectation that students at a university would use their voice and use their opportunities to speak and to share their perspective and to ensure that people are understanding what is going on and why they're against it. And so I am 100% behind peaceful, clear action to ensure that the voices of those who don't have one are heard, and that as long as it's peaceful and respectful and direct, I'm all behind it. Now, of course, there are a lot of bad actors at different protests, at different universities, who are spraying anti-Semitic slurs on buildings. They're desecrating different Jewish cultural centers, and they're threatening and bullying students of all different backgrounds. Jewish students, Palestinian students, American students. And that's completely wrong. If you support one side or another on a campus, you should be free to express that in a peaceful, direct, and loving way to ensure that your voice is heard and to ensure that what you want to see happen is clear to those who make decisions. And so I just want to get on the record and make sure that's clear. I would be remiss without mentioning the fact that these encampments are spreading all across the country. people are, I think, rightfully angry and upset at the scale of the civilian death in Palestine, in Gaza in particular. They're enraged by the attacks and the bombings and the destruction of the civil infrastructure there, the churches, the hospitals, the schools, aid workers, aid trucks, journalists. Journalists are being killed at an alarming rate, higher than any other conflict ever recorded. This is a reason to be upset and a reason to voice your concern and a reason to stand up and protest against it. And so I'm behind you 100%. I don't condone violence. I don't condone any kind of hate speech, any kind of racial slurs, any kind of threats, any kind of violent activity. We don't do that. We peacefully march. We peacefully protest. We sit in. We get our bullhorns and we share our perspective. We dance and sing and make sure that they see joy in the protests and they see hope in the protests and they see people from all different backgrounds coming together for one goal, which is in this case to end the war, to have a ceasefire, to have a permanent end of the hostilities, to release the hostages, and to get to a real solution. That's what we need. That's what people are asking for. People are demanding that their administrators take steps to help bring about a ceasefire and an end to all of this death and destruction. It's not too much to ask, and I don't think it's wrong to sit under a tent and demand it. I just don't. You may disagree. Maybe you have experiences on campus that I'm not aware of. I'm just looking at the news. I'm looking at the different news feeds, the different people putting stuff out there and highlighting what's going on. If I'm misinformed, please reach out. I love information and I love to be corrected when I'm wrong. But at this point, all I'm hearing is peaceful protests from the students and the faculty at these universities, and the idea that police are coming in and breaking them up in a violent way, which is disproportionate to the actual activities that are happening in the protest. So that's just my 2 cents on the protests at the universities. I am a strong advocate for freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to assembly. Listen, if you feel strongly about what's going on somewhere, anywhere, feel free to peacefully protest it. No problems here. Now, on this episode, I want to talk specifically about the water situation in Palestine. The water. So, water is without question, I would argue, the most critical resource that is necessary for survival and thriving and sustaining not just yourself, but your family, your community, city, state, country, the world. We live off of water. We have to have it. That's why it's so disappointing and so frustrating to know that we have a serious water crisis in Palestine, in the occupied West Bank, and in the Gaza Strip. A serious problem. So let's talk about it. In the Gaza Strip, this is before the current war broke out and all this stuff is happening. Because right now it's awful. There's no water anywhere for anybody. You can't do anything. But before then, the reports were telling us 97% of the water in the Gaza Strip is unsafe for human consumption. 97% of the water. From what I'm reading, what I understand, there's one aquifer in the Gaza Strip and it's continually polluted and withdrawn. So when you have one singular source to sustain millions of people, you will take as much as you can out at rates that are not sustainable. And as a result, because they're so close to the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, there's seawater intrusion into their aquifer because there's no sewage infrastructure, no sewer lines, no sewage treatment plants, none of that stuff. You have open sewers and open sewage going into this aquifer, contaminating it. And so as a result of all of that, you don't have safe drinking water in the Gaza Strip. You just don't have it. And you have not had it for a very long time. And this is a problem. This is a big problem. If you have children, it's a problem. If you're trying to farm and you're trying to eat off the land, it's a problem. If you're trying to cook and feed your family, it's a problem. If you're trying to just do basic hygienic activities, taking a shower, washing your body off, washing your hands, trying to ensure that disease doesn't spread, it's a problem. We all need water to survive. And without that water, life becomes unlivable in that area. And that's what's happening in the Gaza Strip. And what's even worse is that they're not able to build any infrastructure to provide water. They can't drill wells. They can't expand their water system networks. They can't try to pull from other sources. Why not? Well, it's because there's a blockade around the Gaza Strip. And because of that blockade, materials cannot come in. Materials that are deemed to be dual purpose. That's what the phrase is that the government of Israel is calling material that's not allowed in. They would say you could use this for civilian infrastructure or for military purposes. We don't want you to do anything for military purposes, and so we're not letting any of that in. And this is just basic materials. I mean, it's cement and it's building materials and equipment. Can't come in. You can't build anything because we don't want you to expand whatever your capabilities are that you're trying to expand. We don't want it to happen. And so that blockade is preventing any kind of meaningful water infrastructure to be built in the Gaza Strip. None at all. So 97% of your water is contaminated and you can't do anything about it because of what the policies are from the government of Israel. Now, that's in the Gaza Strip. In the West Bank, it's actually very interesting because you actually have Palestinians and Israeli citizens living in that area. And so it's not as though the water is completely cut off from that occupied territory. What's actually happening is if you live in the Palestinian parts of that occupied territory, you have no access. But if you live in a settlement in a particular part of that territory that is inhabited by Israeli citizens, oh, you got plenty of water to drink. It's not a problem. You can do whatever you need to do. And so a lot of human rights, a lot of international rights groups, Amnesty International, Oxfam, the United Nations, B'Tselem is an Israeli human rights group. All of them are talking about how unequal the water situation is in the occupied West Bank. A lot of them are going ahead and calling it water apartheid. The idea that there's water available for some, but not for others. And it's primarily solely because of your affiliation. Palestinian? No. Israeli? Yes. That's what's happening there. And so I learned this today. It's interesting. So there was a war in 1967, the 6-Day War. And at the end of that war, Israel as a nation occupied the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Now, they have since withdrawn from the Gaza Strip, but they continue to occupy the West Bank. And apparently, when they occupied the West Bank, they seized control of all of the water resources in the West Bank. Now, if you're familiar with the West Bank, you'll know that the West Bank is literally called that because it's right next to the Jordan River. The Jordan River is a tremendously fertile, amazingly productive part of the Middle East. People love the Jordan River, the Jordan Valley. Oh man, it's nice. It's really nice. And during that time when they seized control of those water resources, the Jordan River, all the aquifers, all of the infrastructure that's there, they kept it to themselves. They didn't allow the Palestinians to have any of that water to use for their daily life. And it wasn't apparently until, I guess, the 90s where there was an agreement that there would be some water sharing. But that water sharing is inequitable. From what I read just now, 80% goes to Israeli citizens, 20% to the Palestinians. That's not equal. 80 is much higher than 20. And so that's not the way you share anything. That's not how that works. And so not only is that the sharing kind of arrangement, but the control still rests with the Israeli government. And so if you need more water, you have to get permission from the government to purchase that water, to build infrastructure, to bring in that water, to harvest that rainwater. You can't do anything. You can't do anything. And so the last numbers that I saw when it comes to consumption in the West Bank, the United Nations and Amnesty International say that Israelis in the West Bank consume at least 4 times more water than the Palestinians do. They say that the Palestinians consume an average of 73 liters of water a day per person, which, in case you're counting, the World Health Organization recommends a minimum of 100 liters of water a day per person. So the minimum for consumption is 100. Palestinians are consuming 73. That's just consumption. This is not growing crops, feeding animals. This is just you as an individual consuming water to make sure that you're taken care of and sustained. That is what's going on there. And this article even says that in many hurting communities in the West Bank, there's thousands of Palestinians that are drinking as little as 20 liters a day because they're trying to take care of their livestock as well. So they're barely getting water for themselves. Meanwhile, the average Israeli citizen that lives in that same area, 300 liters of water a day. There's a huge discrepancy, a huge issue, clearly an injustice. This is not how this is supposed to go. This is not how we treat each other with the resources so important as water. You can't do that. And of course, since Israel is in control, since the government of Israel is in control of all of the infrastructure, if you are trying to build a water well, if you're trying to put in a new pipeline to get water from another part of the country, you need permission from the Israeli government to do it. Actually, not the government, from the army, because it's an occupation. So when you're in occupied territory, the army controls what happens there, not the government, not elected officials, not people who are sent to represent people. This is the army that's in control. They're the ones who decide if you get to build what you need to get water. And no surprise, it's hard to get a permit from the army to build a water well, to put in a new water line, to put in a pump station, to do any of these things, to increase the availability of water in a Palestinian community. Look, I don't know where you stand on the issues. I don't know how you feel about the idea of people being occupied or being under army rule and control. I don't know if you have any thoughts about 1 state or 2 states or 3 states. I don't know. People are debating it. They've been debating it for decades now. I don't know what the best solution is. But I do know one thing. People need water to survive. People need water to live. People need water to function in the world. And if you deny them access to water, if you deny them the ability to build in ways that can provide them water, if you deny them the opportunity and the access to water all around them, all I can say is you're enabling and enacting injustice in the region. It doesn't matter what the political situation is. People need water. You need to get it. And you know what's interesting? This is what's interesting. So if you live in a settlement in the West Bank, don't worry. They got you covered. They got those water lines running all through the occupied territory to get to where you are, to make sure you have all that you need to survive and thrive and live that life. Oh, it's so nice. I saw these pictures, green trees, lush lawns. It's nice. And what it tells me is that it's possible. There's nothing wrong with settlers having water to drink. They need water too. You can debate whether it's legal that they're there or not, but they need water to drink too. So to get them some water, but clearly it's possible to get everybody some water, to provide everybody what they need. It's not an issue of resources or ability. You're clearly discriminating. You're clearly dehumanizing a group of people because they're Palestinian and preventing them from getting what they need and preventing them from living the life they should be living. That's what you're doing when you choose, because you're making a choice not to provide that water, not to build those water lines, not to build those water wells. That's what you're doing. You are, whether you like to believe it or not, you are enacting water apartheid in that region. That's what you're doing. And it's unimaginable. It's unimaginable. And so I don't know when this current conflict is going to end. I don't know when the hostages will be returned. I don't know when we're going to have peace. I don't know. But we can still advocate for justice. We can still say that the water situation in Palestine is unjust and needs to be corrected and needs to be addressed now. Because people need water now. People need to wash their clothes and cook their food and raise their animals and farm their land and enjoy what water provides. They need it now. And so I would just say on this podcast that any situation where one group of people has all the clean water they need that they could ever desire to live like they want to live, and the other group doesn't, that we have a clear definition of environmental injustice, water apartheid, and it needs to be corrected. It needs to be corrected. And that's the show for today. Thank you so much for listening to the Environmental Justice Lab, where we are for the people and for the planet. See you next time.